We frequently hear the term self-management in Scrum teams or self-organizing. And I thought, what better thing to talk about in a podcast than trying to highlight what self-management, what self-governing really means. So self-managing teams are one of the foundational principles in Scrum. As Scrum Masters, we're trained to strive towards that idea. It embodies the first value of the Agile Manifesto, where you're putting individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And the first step to doing that is to give the team autonomy on how to organize themselves to achieve their sprint goals. Only then do we give them tools or processes to support the specific way of organizing themselves. Self-management is actually critical to succeeding as an Agile team because it leads to greater ownership and empowerment of the team. It creates intrinsic motivation, which is a powerful driver for team effectiveness. However, in reality, we find that self-management remains a challenge. Developers on Scrum teams just don't feel comfortable with self-managing. Sometimes they struggle to take ownership of their own work. So this lack of ownership is especially visible in an inability to commit to a sprint goal, which is perhaps the most important accountability of the developers. Too often we see that they're dependent on the product owner to tell them what to do and feed them things, spoon feed it, right? Too often we see the product owner literally spoon feed the developers everything they need just to keep them busy. The situation is then made worse by the fact that the product owner often thinks that it's their responsibility to make sure the developers are kept busy. The focus on, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to, resource utilization or person utilization, which is terrible for flow. And it makes everything hard to do. And it makes it hard to focus on delivering value when you know you're just going to have things hung above you if you're not showing it you're busy during busy time. This relationship between a product owner and developers creates a reinforcing loop. Developers gradually lose the need to contribute and are simply conditioned to expect to be told what to do. They see product owner as their manager, responsible for just keeping them busy and keeping things flowing. This in turn reinforces the role of the product owner as the manager of the work to be done, often leading to additional accountabilities like business analysts and architects, which in turn leaves less space for developers to break out of this critical, senseless loop. So self-management is a hard skill to develop, especially because in general, most developers are usually regarded as coders. They write the code, and they're not full partners in what they're trying to deliver. So this lack of developer empowerment is a hard habit to break. Even for those of us used to self-management, we've probably all had that experience where you have no idea what to do next. I know I've been there. You're stuck and you start procrastinating. This happens even when you're pair programming or mob programming or swarming. There'll be moments where developers finish a product backlog item of their own. And perhaps doing that, or perhaps doing some minor fixes, their plan has finished, or the pair who's planning, so the pair programmers, they finished their work and they've already moved on to something else. It's just really interesting to me to see how pairing and mobbing and swarming relate to this topic so well. The challenge is that breaking a habit requires a variety of skills and prerequisites, making it quite complex. In many organizations that I'm seeing today, we have people still siloed into one school of thinking or one skill set, and it causes them not to be able to break away. So to help break the habit and help Scrum Masters and teams learn self-management more effectively, there should be a simple approach to help Scrum developers figure out or how to pick up new work during a sprint and what do they need to do. Do they include it in their current sprint? Do they add it as, in my world, I'll just say, I always tell them to get a head start on the first item in the next sprint. I don't want to pull anything into the sprint until it's completely finished. That way they can earn the cheese when they need it, but at the same time, they're not pulling things in every single sprint. This does two things. One, if you keep pulling stuff in during a sprint, it gives a false impression that the team committed to do all that work at the beginning of the sprint, which is false. Two, it shows that work's going to carry over from one sprint to another because they're not going to finish those things because they weren't things they originally committed to. So you're setting a bad tone for the team when you do that, which is not good. So for me, I think you need to, when you're thinking about getting things done, you need to think as a product owner about three things to help them. The first is sprint goal. while doing this and going through the steps in an agile approach, developers should always remember that the highest priority is to find out how they can help achieve a sprint goal. It sounds easier than it is, though, because many organizations don't even focus on a sprint goal. So for me, I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. It's important for us to know, because if we want things to be clear, if we want work to be more relaxed and less fussy, we need to know and understand that there's always going to be a time where things go sideways. But if you remind yourself to take a deep breath and just refocus and move on, and stop and ask the questions. Why am I here now? What brought me here? What you're going to do is you're going to be able to look at this, and you're going to be able to say, okay, now that I know where I am and why I'm here, now I can ask myself, what can I do to help bring me one step closer to achieving that goal? So as long as you keep that rule in mind, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to flow and you'll be fine. So speaking of flow, the second thing to keep in mind, which is a little more abstract, but no less important, is flow. It has nothing to do with a direct correlation to resource utilization, right? You have to move away from that. The thing to keep in mind here is if you're working on a flow-based model, it's the goal of working together as a team to accomplish a goal and maintain flow. It shouldn't be just to keep people busy working on mindless, senseless tasks. This is where we boil back down to Little's Law. The more things you have going on at any given time, the longer each thing's going to take. With the far-reaching implication that most of the time, developers some developers will wind up having nothing to do, and other developers are going to wind up being overwhelmed just based on work not properly being allocated. So this is where you start finishing things that you commit to and stop starting new things until the next sprint if you have to. So do more by doing less, right? Queuing theory. Make sure you get it right. And finally, teamwork. A Scrum team works together as a team without exception. This is not simply a question of formalities. A team combines their cognitive power to create hive memory of a plan of what they need to do. This allows them to collectively have a more complete view of the Scrum framework and improves their ability to manage sprints more effectively as it unfolds. It's the ultimate remedy for the limitations of our individual skills and experience and helps us feast on what everyone else can do. So you can go through and you can do other things to help you achieve these goals, objectives like pair programming or mobbing or swarming. You could do mini sprint planning or backlog refinement meetings once a week, right, for an hour per week. You can expand beyond the sprint goal and talk about, who you are, anything special happened, those kinds of things, just to keep people engaged. So engagement is a big thing. And you want to make sure that people feel like they're needed. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And finally, refinement. You want to make sure you're taking the time to refine everything that you're doing and that you're stepping through step by step and identifying where there's gaps, but that you're also flexible to make change, but certain and confident in the things that are there so that you can continue to press forward doing the things that you do. That's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.